I'm Molly Turlish. I'm the membership chair of the Brookline Community Aging Network, what we call Brookline CAN. And we are a separate nonprofit organization housed in the Senior Center, where we are lucky enough to be tonight for our annual meeting. The Senior Center was one of the 4 organizations that helped found Brookline CAN about 6 years ago. And we have grown to an organization of about 400 members. Everyone always says things like, I'm not old enough to be a member. But our members range in age from 32 to 97. Now, more of us are retired than any other category, but not everyone, and I want to make that point. We advocate for seniors in Brookline. We do such things as push for faster clearance of snow from sidewalks. We don't need to worry about that today, thank goodness, but there will come a time when we're grateful for it. We work on sidewalk safety, and we have a project that particularly works with residents of senior public housing to work on pedestrian safety near their buildings, which has been a great boon to them and to us, so it's a great partnership. And we work on projects that our members bring to us. Once, a few years ago, a member discovered that her mother, who lived in Brookline, was nervous about going to commercial areas because she sometimes needed a restroom in a hurry and she didn't know where they were. So we put together a list of restrooms in commercial areas that can be used by the public. That's just the kind of thing that we do. We also have a guide to residential buildings with elevators, so seniors who are particularly in need of elevators, or people with small children who want to be in a building with elevators, can come to us and find out, come to our website actually, and find out where those buildings are. I could go on, but really what we would love is for people to join us and become part of our solution to the challenges of getting older and being in Brookline. We want it to be the most livable place it can be.
We're the Communications Committee. We make sure that everybody in Brookline CAN and in Brookline knows about what we're doing, and everything that we're doing is to make Brookline better for everybody in Brookline. This is John, and John built the website. John, you want to talk about the website? Oh yeah, he's got the website.
Website's here. It's a very active website that talks about the various activities that the Brookline CAN is doing in the community. Great resource for things that you might need or things you might be interested in.
And give us the name of the website.
Oh, www.brooklinecan.org.
And I co-edit the newsletter. It comes out once a month. It comes out in paper, and it also comes out as electronically as an email. Most people get it by email. And we have articles about Brookline CAN activities, but also about interesting things that are going on in town that people might like to go to.
Hi, I'm Emily Cooper. I'm the Chief Housing Officer at the Massachusetts Executive Office of Elder Affairs. I'm here at this event trying to support Brookline in its efforts to create age-friendly communities and communities where elders and seniors can age in place in the community of their choice. Elder Affairs supports communities to allow elders to age in place. What this means is we help expand affordable housing opportunities, and we help people increase access to the services that allow them to live where they want for as long as they'd like.
So I'm so excited to be here tonight. This is a great program, and thanks to Brookline CAN for putting on this program and all the advocacy work they do. I'm particularly excited tonight because we had an in-depth conversation about senior housing in Brookline, which is a topic that we are wrestling with as a community. There's never enough senior housing. It's not affordable, and I hope that tonight's conversation leads to some solutions, some things that we can do to to help our senior population become further integrated into Brookline and remain in Brookline, age in place. So thank you to Frank Caro and to the organizers of tonight's event, and hopefully there'll be action items that come out of it.
My name is Barbara Scotto. I'm a member of the school committee, and as a member of the school committee, I am the liaison to the Council on Aging. So I come to their meetings, and if seniors have some concerns about what's going on in the schools, I'm there to answer their questions. I'm particularly delighted to be here tonight because BCAN is an organization that greatly supports the seniors in the town of Brookline. And I was delighted to find that our high school jazz band was playing and that one of the members was Alice Jennings, who is a student representative to the school committee for this year. So talk a little bit about the high school, maybe we'll talk a little bit about the high school jazz band.
We're the jazz band, otherwise known as the Music Collective. We play all sorts of music, mainly jazz. We decided to come here just to show our involvement in the community. We're one of the leading musical groups of young people in the town. Yeah, and I'm also on the school committee as the student representative. I want to be a larger part of the town in general. Yeah.
And I think the fact that we are bringing, that the school committee is helping to bring younger people into the senior center is a really good thing. There was a terrific response to the jazz band. People were really enjoying it.
I think another thing that's really important is that there needs to be an effort to get the youth arts into the public eye, and this is a great way to practice outreach.
and watched how much they enjoyed what they were doing. It was like this awesome bonus. Did you all get to hear them and see them dancing? Very amazing. So it's the high school jazz band. And I should also tell you that one of the people who's in the band, the violinist who is wearing the light colored plaid shirt, is actually the representative from the high school to the school committee. So what this says to all of us, and we should remember this, is that we all wear different hats and we all have lots of things that we're interested in. And I'm hoping that tonight, even though you're here because you're probably interested in what's happening with housing here in Brookline and what the trends are, you're here because this is a place you enjoy coming to. So welcome everybody. I think that you've had an opportunity to actually explore what it is that Brookline has to offer and is thinking about doing. And so one of the projects of the Brookline Community Aging Network is to basically give people information. And one of the main projects this year has been to identify, understand, and learn about what is available, what kind of senior housing is available in our community. So welcome everybody. The first order of business is going to be an opportunity for us to say thank you to Frank Carroll and Ruth Ann Dobeck, who's the director of the the Senior Center, but also they're the co-chairs for BCAN. And so they're going to come up here.
I just want to say quickly welcome to all of you on behalf of Brookline CAN, the steering committee. We also want to thank, Ruth Ann and I want to thank the volunteers who put this program together. We've been working on this for some months. And I should also take for some moment to congratulate Roberta, who has recently assumed responsibility for chairing the Brookline Council on Aging. The Brookline CAN works closely with the council, and Roberta has been part of us from the inception, and it's really nice that she has assumed that responsibility.
Thank you, Frank. Just want to welcome everyone to one of our fall festive events. This has become our annual meeting for Brookline CAN. As a reminder, this is a volunteer operation, and we are dependent on our members to both give us feedback. So there is a survey at your seats. We're just trying to whet your appetite about housing. If you want to hear about more housing, please write down your ideas, and then we will be producing an educational program. And hopefully you have met some of your neighbors here today and possibly want to engage in more volunteer activity to continue to make Brookline the best community that it can possibly be for all ages. So please join us in those efforts. Thank you.
So Ruth Ann is going to come back because you're coming back. You're coming back. The important thing is that there are two longtime members of the steering committee for Brookline CAN who are retiring this year. So it's Carol and Peter Ames.
Thank you, Roberta. As I said in my remarks, we need our volunteers to man all of the committees and perform the tasks of our steering committee. who have served since the beginning and have now ended their time as the steering committee. And again, if we have anybody in the community who's interested in joining one of our activities, and especially our volunteer posts, we urge you to talk to the chairs of those committees. But tonight we want to say thank you to Peter Ames from Precinct 1, who served as the liaison from the Council on Aging to the steering committee and was part of our, and continues to be, an active part of the membership committee, and always has his eye on our finance to make sure that we have enough money saved and are spending our money very frugally. So with that, we thank Peter Ames for his years of service on the steering committee, and thank you. We have an orchid for Peter. And the second member of our steering committee who has stepped down is Carol Caro, who most of us know from many of her town functions, but has been the chair and will continue to chair the Communications Committee and the wonderful newsletter that Brookline Can produces each month. I hope that everyone has seen it and will continue to receive it by either email or in hard copy. And Carol has given so much to the Communications Committee to keep us on really the flow of communications, which is an essential part of Brookline Can. So Carol, thank you for your years of service.
Next on the agenda are the Community Service Awards, and Selectman Nancy Daly is going to actually honor us by honoring some significant people who have made incredible donations to our town and who we appreciate. So Nancy Daly.
Thank you. I have to digress for 1 minute. I hope that everyone will bear with me. Many of you know that Frank Caro, who sort of kicked off BCAN, also decided that Brookline should become an age-friendly city, and we have done that under a World Health Organization designation, and we've had a bunch of activities that have, many of them have been co-sponsored by BCAN as well as the Age-Friendly City Committee. But Brookline wasn't enough for Frank. He needed a bigger venue. So he has, apparently, Frank has stimulated the city of Newton, and they are going to kick off their effort to become an age-friendly city on Tuesday, I guess. We have a representative from Newton in the back of the room. But there's no end to Frank's energy. Well, thank you. So we have a couple of very worthy award recipients tonight, and the first one is Roger Blood. And Roger Blood has been on Brookline's Housing Advisory Board, which we call the HAB, for 25 years. He's been chairman of that for over 20 years. And he has worked tirelessly to promote affordable housing in Brookline. But Roger's a good example of how lucky we are in Brookline, because his vocation was in mortgage financing for housing, and so he's made it his avocation as well to on behalf of the town of Brookline to work in this area. He did some of his efforts included developing our inclusionary zoning bylaw, which means a percentage, it's 15%, of when developments over a certain size have to include affordable units. And he's also worked hard to leverage state and federal funds for our projects that we have been supporting here, affordable housing projects. And he has run the lotteries for the affordable home ownership units in Brookline. They try to make it very fair. Those units get many more people want affordable units than we have available, sadly, but they try to make it as fair as possible, and that's Roger's effort too. He's also sponsored the Chapter 40B housing, co-sponsored, the HAB has, the Chapter 40B housing production plan to guide appropriate development. And many of you have probably heard some of us complaining about some of the 40B projects, but this is an effort to steer them in a little more positive direction. So we give great thanks, Roger, for your many years of working, and really, I really think that Roger's efforts have demonstrably led to projects like St. Aidan's and like the one on Fisher Hill that have resulted in significant affordable units in the town of Brookline. So thank you very much, Roger.
Thank you, Nancy. Frank said I could just take a few minutes briefly to not only acknowledge this wonderful honor award, which I greatly appreciate, and one of the benefits of working with affordable housing people in Brookline has been not only some feeling of accomplishment for the community, but the people that we get to work with. Nancy made her description sound, it was a bit individual, but that's the furthest thing from the truth. The Housing Advisory Board has had, it's actually, I went back in my sub-basement vault last night to see, it's actually 28 years since it was formed and I began, and so we have a great current membership and a long alumni association. The original members included, many of you may know David Treach, who actually conceived of the whole idea of the Housing Advisory Board, brought it to town meeting along with the trust fund that we manage that's taken in over $12 million over those years and put out about $10 million to advance affordable housing. It's been a particular privilege to work with Frank Caro. I read the Brookline CAN's annual report recently and my jaw just dropped as I was going through it. Frank is so unassuming that the sheer range of things that he has led with that organization in Brookline. Housing is only a small piece of that. I'd like to think of not only the people on the HAB, and the Board of Selectmen has always made one of their members in particular over the years, especially supportive of affordable housing in Brookline, especially Donna Calico, who many of you may remember, and also, of course, she had such a great role in founding the Senior Senate here, and who kind of sadly is just in the process of leaving Brookline after all these years. Betsy DeWitt was another very dedicated select woman for advancing the affordable housing agenda in town on behalf of the Board of Selectmen. So thank you, Betsy, for all your support.
Betsy, you just get right over there. Please stand up.
On the staff, the Housing Division staff, Virginia Bullock is here, and she actually currently handles most of the heavy lifting. And prior to her, Fran Price, who some of you may know for 15 years, they basically made me look good by all of what they did, the public face and everything that goes on behind the scenes. And I think just the last thing, very quickly, I'd like to take an opportunity to say, there's an adage, I think, that's especially well known in Brookline, something called think globally, act locally. And kind of unexpectedly in my working career. I had, beginning around Y2K, I had the unexpected opportunity to start visiting excuse me, developing countries around the world with the World Bank calls them missions for advancing affordable home ownership. And here's where the global and local came together. The Brookline Housing Division in town has produced a book that going way back many years, and it brings it up to date every so often, called Housing Brookline, Affordable Housing Policy and Programs. And it's a nice little précis on the website as well about everything that the town has developed in its toolkit for affordable housing. And so I started packing my suitcase, my briefcase, with a small supply of these and taking them to many different countries around the world and trying to help maybe put Brookline on the map, because there's some really good stuff in here. And the one real honor that I had was in Beijing. Some years ago, I had the chance to have lunch with two women, one of whom was the second policy person for the People's Republic of China. And we had a great exchange at the end of the meeting. She gave me China's policy book, the counterpart of Housing Brookline. And while I can't read a word that's in it, it's along with our book, two of my most prized possessions. So, Frank, thank you very much. It's really been an honor to serve the town in this beloved capacity.
I neglected to say earlier that two of my colleagues, Ben Franco and Bernard Green, wave your hands, and Barbara Scotto from the school committee are all here. Great. Yeah, so for those of you who know what this school is going to be, you may feel free to buttonhole and no, we haven't quite voted yet. It's coming soon. Okay, our second Community Service Award goes to the Board of Assessors. And this is another example where we have such wonderful people. On the Board of Assessors is Gary McCabe, the town assessor. And we actually pay him, he works for the town, but he does a fabulous job. But our volunteers for the Board of Assessors are amazing. We have Harold Peterson, who's Emeritus Professor of Economics at Boston College, and Mark Mazur, who's here tonight. Mark's day job is assessor for the town of Sharon. But he lives in Brookline, so he's willing on his off hours to spend time helping out here in Brookline with the Board of Assessors. So thank you for that. We have some great programs that the Board of Assessors and Gary McCabe have been very good about promoting. And many of you know about the property tax work-off program for low and moderate income senior homeowners. And there's 30 seniors are presently working in that, and a number of them work here at the senior center, and it really helps this place to run. Gary and the board have also consistently recommended that the town encourage participation in other programs that help seniors manage their property tax burden. They have been very conscientious about publicly educating people on what is out there, and I know I saw downstairs that you had some material out on the various programs. And I think the original thought had been to give Gary the award because we see him a lot, but Gary said no. It had to be the whole Board of Assessors. And so we thank you all very much for your hard work, and I have an award for the Board of Assessors with all your names on it, but they did give Gary his own even bigger one. So thank you very much. Would you
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here on behalf of the Board of Assessors and the entire staff of the Assessor's Office. Our relationship with
the older citizens of the community is a very important one, and the work that we do to make people aware of the exemptions that are available is something that we take very seriously. And I urge people who are interested in exemptions that can be available to stop by our office or give us a call or check out our website. As I said, we really take that very seriously, and we hope to expand the use of those exemptions. There are programs that can help people who are having trouble just getting by financially. And we hope that those programs are used more and more as the years go on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So our keynote speaker tonight is Len Fishman, and Frank is going to come back and introduce him, and we will learn a bit more about housing for seniors. So, Frank?
Hi. I'm very pleased to introduce Len Fishman. The number of things I want to say about him. At the top of the list is that he is he's not only a Brookline resident, but he is a new Brookline CAN member. Len has held 3 major administrative positions in the field of aging. He served as Commissioner of the Department of Health in the state of New Jersey. He was president and CEO of an organization that's now called Leading Edge, which is a coalition of senior-focused nonprofit organizations. The organization is based in Washington, D.C. Many of the members of that organization of Leading Edge provide senior housing and services that go along with housing. Locally, Len is very well known for the 13 years in which he served as CEO of Hebrew Senior Life, which is New England's largest nonprofit provider of senior housing and health care. Among other things, Hebrew Senior Life operates Centered Communities of Brookline, and an organization, one of our founding partners. Under Len's leadership, Hebrew Senior Life experienced tremendous growth, expanding to 9 locations in the greater Boston area and increasing its numbers of senior constituents to over 6,000. He oversaw the creation of Newbridge on the Charles in Dedham. Currently, Len is the director of the Gerontology Institute at UMass Boston. As director of the Institute, he builds bridges between the world of aging policy and UMass Boston's wide-ranging educational programs in gerontology. And I should say that, whenever I have a chance to, I say UMass Boston is the world's largest producer of PhDs in gerontology. I say that as a former faculty member in that program. So, and we're very, very happy with him to give us some perspective on
just getting a little logistical. Might not be a bad idea to dim the lights if that's possible. Is there a dimming function, or is it either entirely on or off? So while we're getting the flash drive engaged, I want to thank Frank for the introduction and point out that the position I now have, which is director of the Gerontology Institute, is a position Frank had. He's the director twice removed, and the figure who is, I would say, most identified with the Gerontology Institute, and has left very, very big shoes to fill. There, in addition to everything that you know about him through the work that he's done at BCAN and in many other venues, it is an incredible pleasure to be back here. Ruth Ann, it's been a while since I was at the senior center, this gorgeous senior center, and it's the first time that I've been here to speak as a resident of Brookline, and that's undoubtedly why Kathy Burns buttonholed me a few days ago and said, "Don't you think it's time you signed up as a member of BCAN?" She was entirely right, so I'm delighted to now be a member in good standing. So I want to pick up with a theme that was sounded a little earlier about the influence of this organization. I think many people know this quote from Margaret Mead: "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing it ever has." And so I want to offer congratulations to the thoughtful, committed members of Brookline CAN, because I think this organization can be said to have given birth to the age-friendly communities movement in the state of Massachusetts, which is now gathering tremendous strength. Frank, I think you would be very pleased. I know that you're keeping tabs on this. Frank is, in fact, the editor of a book that documents age-friendly communities around the world. Massachusetts is really getting behind this movement in a very big way. I'm delighted that Newton is signing up. Newton's, usually a step or two behind Brookline, but it's great that they're trying to keep up. They have a terrific council of older adults in Newton, and I'm sure they'll do a great job. So you folks really should take a lot of pride in the impact that you've had, not just in your town, but in the entire state of Massachusetts. So Frank asked me to address the issue of the challenge of providing enough affordable housing for seniors. And I want to say at the beginning that this talk is going to be somewhat impressionistic and highly selective, because this is a topic that one could give a symposium on that would last for a week. I want to focus on a couple of ideas that I have been noodling over, and you're sort of my first focus group to share these ideas with. So forgive me if they're not fully baked. If any of you hear me talk about this again, the talk will be that much better because I will have had some of your input. So I want to start by providing some context, talking about briefly where seniors live, the housing assistance gap, what makes housing so expensive, options for reducing costs, and then I want to focus on one option in particular. But I want to start where I almost always start when I talk about anything, which is this so-called longevity bonus, which is the additional 30 years that has been added to the human lifespan in just 100 years. So we're living 30 years longer than our great-grandparents did. And in terms of human history, it was like the average lifespan was like 20 years for 100,000 years, and went up to the 30s, and then it went up to the 40s, and then boom, it went up like this. It's like an L on its side. What is, to me, really interesting about this change is not just that people are living longer, it's that the people in this room are among the first cohort of seniors who expect to live longer, and that makes a really big difference. Up until now, people in their 80s and 90s kind of stumbled into that phenomenon unexpectedly. But people in this room have a very good chance of living into their late 80s or 90s or beyond. And this is the first group of people in human history with that expectation. And it's also worth noting that the 30 years that has been added has really been added pretty much to middle age, not to frail old age. So the question is, and the reason I emphasize this point is that you never start with a clean slate whenever you talk about anything. But we have an opportunity to size up problems differently because we are planning for a reality that is brand new. And it should challenge us to think about things a little differently. So you're not going to be able to make out this chart, but I'll tell you the bottom line here is, as a reality check, even when you're talking about people 85 and over 60% live in homes that they own, and about 90% live in single dwelling or multifamily units. That is, they're living in the community. Less than 10% are living, or approximately, I'm sorry, a little over 10%, 85 and over, are living in what we call group quarters, which includes a lot of things. But as a reality check, it's important to remember that people, even when they are quite old, continue to live in the community. So I want to briefly note what everybody in this room knows, which is that there's a tremendous gap between the number of people who are eligible for housing assistance and the number of people who are getting assistance. And that gap is around 2.5 to 3 million. So the chart shows you on the left-hand side, the dark part of the bar in the bottom is how many people are getting help, and the lighter part of the bar is how many people are not. And you can see that the numbers of older adults who will need assistance will be growing in proportion to the population. So this housing assistance gap is very substantial. So why is senior housing so expensive? You might ask, why is housing so expensive? So this isn't rocket science. It's the cost of real estate, plus the cost of construction, plus regulatory constraints that lead to very high construction costs per square foot. That's what we usually focus on, but then you have to multiply that by something else, which is the square footage of living space, which is the thing I'm going to talk about the most. What are our expectations about the amount of space we have to live in? So something that I learned when I was at Hebrew Senior Life and had the privilege of doing some real estate developing for the first time, is that some of these issues, real estate cost and construction, are more or less immutable. Those things are not going to be changed. However, regulations can be changed, and in particular, it's about height and density. We have, I would argue, some outdated ideas about how high buildings should be and how densely they should be populated. And then it's also about what kinds of living arrangements we permit and the square footage per person, again. So there are different ways of reducing square footage per person. I should mention, by the way, when you talk about cost of senior housing, you can also look at it, as I have for most of my life as an advocate for seniors, as a subsidy problem. It goes without saying, but I will say that the federal government is spending way too little on subsidies for housing older adults, and for that matter, people of all ages, and that's why we have that big gap in the number of people who need assistance and are getting it. But I will also say that I don't expect that to change very much in the foreseeable future. So I want to focus on not the immutable things, but the things that I think maybe could be changed even by the people in this room. So, you know, one way of, so if you think about this as a square footage problem, cost of construction, if you think about what it costs to develop an apartment in the Boston area, it's about $400 per square foot. So if you're developing a 1,000 square foot apartment, it's going to cost you about $400,000 to buy the real estate, to do the construction. That doesn't include all the soft costs, marketing and so on. You're not going to change. $400,000 is kind of the baseline for building a 1,000 square foot apartment, and there's not a lot you can do to change that if you're trying to build it in the city of Boston. But you can do things like putting people together. There are programs that match seniors to live together. If you put 2 people in a 1,000 square foot apartment, now it costs half as much to house them as if one is living in a 1,000 square foot apartment. If you allow accessory units, or sometimes they're referred to as in-law units, you are allowing additional people to lean on the home of their children, or whatever the arrangement is, which again reduces the square foot per person. You know, continuing care retirement communities, which most people here know, Huber Senior Life runs Newbridge and the Charles, Orchard Cove. Everybody who lives in a CCRC downsized when they got there. They moved from a bigger house to a smaller one. They ended up decreasing the square footage per person when they moved in. Although senior housing, like all other housing, has tracked the ballooning of the size, as I'll show you in a moment. And then one of my favorites is multi-generational households. Some of you may have seen an article in the Globe just a few weeks ago that talked about families that are coming together and trying to recreate the reality that many of us knew when we were growing up, which is an extended family living either in the same building or in proximity to each other. Then we had 60 or 70 years of blowing up the extended family and kids moving all over and raising their kids without support. I have a feeling that it may be that we look back on the explosion of the extended family as a little blip in human history that actually didn't work. And one piece of evidence is that for the first time in half a century, multi-generational households in the United States are in the increase. It bottomed out in around 1990. In 1900, 2/3 of Americans lived in homes that had 3 generations under one roof. By 1990, it had dropped to just 12%. It's now up to 17%, and that was before the recession, so it's not just people contracting to deal with that reality. Part of it has to do, frankly, with the immigration of Asians and Latinos who are more likely to live in multi-generational households. But that's not the only thing. We're also seeing people who historically would not have conceived of bringing 2 generations together, looking to buy a home, and I have lots of anecdotes, not enough to make policy yet, but of people my age, I'm 64, talking to their kids about thinking about living under one roof or in proximity to each other so they can promote intergenerational financial support and also look to a time when the older adults may need some assistance from their kids. This is gonna change radically over the next 10 to 20 years because people, as I was saying, people are looking ahead, they're seeing what, I know at age 64 that if I live into my 80s, I probably will need some assistance. And why not start talking to my kids about it now as I have? And what economic trade-offs can we make that will make the kids better off and more willing to and more able to help? Now I want to spend the remaining 10 minutes or so talking about the thing that I am really most interested in, which is a more radical option for reducing square footage per person, which is to look at a movement that many of you may have heard of. It's sometimes referred to as the small house movement. Small houses are houses that are under 1,000 square feet. the tiny house movement, houses that are under 400 square feet, micro apartments under 400 square feet, and asked whether it is possible that it can be applied to senior housing. But let me first provide you with a context, which is that in the year that I was born, the average new home, not the average home, the average new home being built in the United States was 983 square feet. By 1980, it had increased to 1,600 square feet, and by 2010, it had reached 2,400 square feet. Now, I don't want to get all sentimental here, but when you ask people my age about the neighborhoods they grew up in, they generally have very positive things to say. And I can't remember anybody ever saying, but life really sucked because my house wasn't big enough. I grew up in a house that was probably about 1,200 square feet. We had one bedroom for 5 people. One bathroom right there. One bedroom would have been. My father had one bedroom for 5 people in Ukraine. But I had, so one bathroom for 5 people and a little powder room downstairs. Nobody ever complained that we didn't have enough bathrooms because that was the norm. So we've become accustomed to a size of housing that is in some ways nuts. And when you do an examination of how much time people spend in that 2,400 square feet, 75% of the time is spent in the kitchen and the living room or family room. So we are building a lot of space that we spend no time in. And interestingly, when I was doing some research for this talk, housing sizes in the Northeast are greater than any other part of the US, which seems counterintuitive. But it's larger than the Midwest, the South, the West, etc. We could talk about why that is, but we don't have time. But look at this line, and this line just starts from 1973. But this is what this is like the frog that boils slowly in the water. We all think that houses need to be 2,400 square feet if we're going to buy them. But that is a brand new reality if you think about the span of human experience, and if you think back to childhoods we have with homes that were much smaller and obviously had a much better carbon footprint. I mean, utility costs were way lower. There's a lot to be said for those smaller houses. So some of you have probably read articles. This was one of the first that I saw, which is about a micro apartment development, or actually I was looking at several micro apartment developments in the city of New York. And so far, the micro housing movement has been targeting 20 and 30-year-olds. And the argument here is that in a way it's recreating the dorm. So the trade-off is you're getting a lower rent for a much smaller apartment, but you're getting access to lavish common space, living rooms, kitchens, areas that you can hang out in. You can live your life there. The city of New York, thanks to Mayor Bloomberg's Plan New York City, a plan that he intended to strengthen the economy, combat climate change, and prepare New York to accept 1 million more residents by the year 2030, inspired the Museum of the City of New York to launch an exhibition called Making Room, New Models for Housing New Yorkers. And architects submitted designs. They had to be under 400 square feet. Now, this is one of them. If we had more time, I'd show you some others. But one of the important things to remember when you think about micro units is that they can be much more commodious if you have the appropriate furniture. Some of them are built with movable walls, so a single room can be divided into 2 if you have a guest visiting, a side table that converts into a 10-seat dining room. A lot has to do with how intelligently you build in features and the kinds of furniture that you have. So the big question is, what would you trade for space? Brookline is, I think, arguably the greatest town in America to live if you're an older adult. I think it also applies to people younger. But for older adults, I don't think it gets any better than Brookline. But Brookline currently can only handle so many seniors. And if we stick to density and height restrictions, that's the regulatory constraint, it will be very difficult to build new housing for less than, say, $600,000 a unit, which means that a lot of people are going to be priced out of Brookline. So the question I'm asking you to think about is, let's assume that you are somebody who can't afford the market rent here. You don't own a home, you can't afford the market rent, but you love Brookline as much as you, in fact, do right now. But you're going to have to move to Norwood or someplace where housing is cheaper. And all the stuff you love about this town, it's too bad because you can't afford it. So the question is, what size apartment would you be willing to live in? What would you trade off to have a smaller unit in this town? So in preparing this talk, I've been thinking about it since Frank invited me to do it. And as I was preparing it, a light bulb went off in my head on Monday. It took me until Monday of this week to think of this, which is that, I got a little ahead of myself, but another way of thinking about this is, what do we love about Brookline? Brookline has the features, the 8 domains that the World Health Organization has identified, and I'm not going to go through them with you, but you know that Brookline is a fabulous place. So as I was preparing this talk, I had this, this epiphany that I've been here before. Maybe there's a reason that I find myself so attracted to the micro-housing unit. And Frank Davis, who is, I don't know if Frank is still a trustee of Heber Senior Life, but Frank may remember this because he lived through it. The first major decision I had to make when I came to Heber Senior Life was whether to buy the 3 buildings that Roger Stern had built, 2 of which are on Center Street and 1 on Beacon. Those 3 buildings have 517 units of housing. By the way, Donna Calico, I think Donna was the chair of the Board of Selectmen. She was a tremendous advocate. And Donna said to me, because what happened is these were units, or 3 buildings that were built with subsidies from HUD in exchange for a guarantee to keep them affordable for a certain number of years. When it first started, it seemed like those 30 years would never come to an end, but in fact they did. And the logical thing for the Stern family to have done was to sell it to market rate owners, because it happened to have been, this subsidized housing happened to have built in one of the toniest and most desirable neighborhoods in America. And they were about to sell it to a REIT in Cleveland when we stepped in with the encouragement of the town and the state and bought those units. And Donna said to me, if we lose these units, we will never be able to replace them. And I believe Donna was right. So whenever I talk about Center Communities of Brookline, I show the SS Pierce building because it's much better looking than the 3 buildings that we built. God bless Roger Stern. I don't know how the hell he got these buildings permitted, but they were built on the cheap. And when Heber Senior Life bought them, they were decrepit. The vacancy rates were down because the owners had kind of taken their eye off the ball, and the common space was atrocious. There was one room on one level, there was another room on another level, and the sense of community within the buildings was not very great. Now, because Heber Senior Life had built 2 HUD-subsidized projects, Jack Satter House in Revere and Simon C. Fireman Community in Randolph, we knew what great subsidized senior housing could be. And I said to the board, we should buy these buildings because they are in the greatest neighborhood in America, but unless we can renovate them, I don't want to own them, because in their present state, it will bring down the reputation of Hebrew Senior Life. We can't be proud of them. We spent $12 million renovating those buildings, and every dime went into community space. Not a penny went into the apartments, on the theory that when the apartments turned over, we would renovate them. And when we were interviewing contractors, it's not easy renovating a building that's fully occupied, or almost. They're now fully occupied. I remember the first guy we interviewed said, "This is crazy. Everybody always puts the money into the apartments, and they buy some plastic flowers for the common space." Our approach was quite different. I'm going to skip over this to show you in brief, because I'm doing this quickly. We took the common space that had been spread over a number of floors and put it all on one floor to create essentially a main street. We dramatically increased it. We created a library, a fitness room, essentially a coffee shop, a community room. When you go into these buildings, whether it's 100 Center or 1550 or 12, forgetting the number now. Yeah. You get a sense of shared space. So, but if you look at the size of these units, it turns out that they're very small. A studio is 390. This is at 100 Center Street. One bedroom is 550, and two bedrooms 888. We knew that they were small, but the theory was people living in these buildings would be living a good part of their lives in the common space. And I happened to experience this on Monday. Suzanne Gelber, who lives at 1550, hosted a Wise Aging group that I'm part of. And we met not in Suzanne's apartment, we met in the library of 1550, and it was beautiful. Natalie was there that night. The experience for me as a guest was every bit as nice as if I'd been in Suzanne's apartment. For Suzanne, that library is an extension of her living space. So this brings me to the end, which is to say, again, what would you trade for space? If you could build a building with apartments that are dramatically smaller than we now expect, but provided common space that is in effect an extension of people's individual units, would people come? And I believe absolutely they would come if the community is a community like the town of Brookline. By keeping height restrictions low, by restricting density, we are pricing out people who are middle income. And that's something the town of Brookline and every town actually can control. So the bottom line for me is, while I'm still an advocate for increasing subsidies from the federal government and so on, I really think that if we're going to make progress in this area, it's to rethink how many square feet we need to live in, and whether we're going to demand that the towns we live in change the regulatory regime so that the people who are well off are sharing their great towns with people who otherwise could not afford to live there. Thanks very much.
We will conclude the program, and Len, it looks like there are some people who want to ask you some questions. Would you be willing to stay after we conclude? Okay, so thank you. The important thing to tell you is you have a lot of information in the booklet that you have, the program booklet. There is a lot of information here at the Senior Center about housing that may or may not be available, and you should ask us because we want to answer your questions. There's also opportunity, please, to leave suggestions for us. We will read your suggestions. One of my projects this year is to pay attention to some programming, some new ideas in programming, and we'll do that. So tell us what you want, tell us what you need, and we'll try to deliver. Thank you so much for coming. It's been an enormous pleasure. And please realize that the people who are wearing name tags with little green dots are members of BCAN. So join us. Thank you. Good evening.